spiritually, I know I already won. We already won. We're good people. We care about others. We not as first gens, and it's healing first gens. We don't only care about ourselves. We care about our family stories. We are trying to understand. We're trying to break those cycles. Like y'all, somos amazing. Son amazing ustedes. Don't ever forget that. Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. Thank you so much for coming back to another episode. My name is Priscila Luna, aka your intuitive prima. And today I feel energized. I want to give you guys a little preview of my day. So today is Wednesday. You guys are going to hear this on Thursday, but this morning I actually had the opportunity of recording 2 episodes with a beautiful human, part 1 and part 2, of course. And then I got the opportunity, or I had a one-to-one intuitive session. And so it's been a busy morning, but I feel like platicando more. I'm in a talkative mood. So I'm going to take advantage of that and record this episode for you guys. There are different things in my mind that I want to share and talk about. But one of them, which I think will be the main theme, is what it's really like to live an intuitive led life. And I'll try and think of interesting things maybe to share with you guys. But I want to share about that porque a lot of what I talk about, I think, is authenticity and intuition, right? And sometimes I hope that I portray or I share pieces of that with you guys through the stories that I tell. But I think it's worth diving into a little bit deeper. So I'm going to do that. And then I want to talk about what it's been like to meet some of you guys. And it's actually given me this boost of energy that you guys are hearing right now. Because I may have said this before, but as a creator, as someone that puts her voice online and out into the world, I don't always receive or know or gauge what the impact of what I'm doing is. And there are moments where everything kind of gets quiet. And if I don't post, I don't hear back, right? And so it's almost as if I get kind of disconnected to my why, to the impact. And I feel like getting to know you guys, hearing that the podcast maybe has helped or that my videos do help, it's always such a great reminder. It's always such a boost for me to continue to go on. And so I wanted to share a couple of the messages that I've gotten recently that, like I said, re-energized me and gave me back my why. Because also with everything that is going on, it's probably really hard for me to gauge, where everyone's at, what people need to hear right now, what is important, what's not, what mood people are in, what kind of content you guys are consuming. So it's grounding, I guess, to be able to talk to real people, and then that almost gives me a picture, of who I'm talking to, and it's really helpful. So one of the most recent messages that I received through a DM, which you guys are always welcome to slide in my DM si quieren. You'll notice I respond a lot back. So if you're trying to just have a short conversation, just let me know. But I'm always happy to meet you guys. So we tend to have really long combos in there. But it's from a beautiful mujer that said, "Hello, I'm a DACA recipient in nursing school. Your podcast is getting me through it despite everything going on. Muchas gracias." So this is Maria, and shout out to you, Maria. Thank you so much for reaching out. And I mentioned it to you when we were DMing each other, but that really did kind of give me that boost that I needed to continue to get back on here. So thank you so much, Maria. And another beautiful human, she's actually the one that I recorded with today. But when we first got in contact, she said, "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been a listener for over a year now, and your podcast has helped me so much. Thank you for having the courage to set an example to all first-gen Latinas, Latinos, Latines." And it was just another beautiful message. If you're watching the video version of this, my eyes spark up because that's the whole point for me, right? To create impact, to make a difference. I don't want to create, maybe in the future create content just to create. But I mean, I think you guys notice that a lot of what I do comes with a lot of depth. I almost feel like this responsibility to not waste your time, to not waste people's time, to not add to the fluff, because I feel like there's a lot of need, for healing, for feeling not alone. And so that's kind of what I tend to focus on. Um but that actually leads me to something that I wanted to mention to you guys, which is that I've been kind of changing the vibe of the podcast just a tad bit. In the sense that I want it to be a little bit more como una carne asada as opposed to maybe like a therapy session. Although I can't promise that it'll be like that always, porque I've noticed that's just who I am and how I tend to interact with others. It is those deep talks, it is those highs and lows. And I think that that's what's reflected in the podcast, but I have been feeling the need to also infuse more laughs, more of that like relaxed, no sé, como not as deep always, porque there's enough things going on in the world, in our communities. And so I understand the need también to be able to kind of like take a deep breath and exhale, exhale, and release some of the things. I was just telling the guest for today that, or for the episode that I recorded earlier, that I've been embracing who I am, my authenticity for quite a few years, and that meant bringing back my Spanglish, and that also meant that my accent or me mispronouncing words sometimes happens. And I love that actually because I feel like it's a reclaiming of who I am. Growing up, I obviously got made fun of for saying certain words wrong, and I didn't know any better, like buffet, which I used to say it buffet, right? Or salmon, and I used to be salmon or salmon. And so getting my accent back has just been like part of evidence for me that my authenticity is here, and that has been cool. But anywho, so I wanted to give you guys insight, I guess, into what an intuitive led life looks like for me as a first gen Latina. Maybe drop in some reality, drop in some magic también, because both of those are ongoingly what I experience. And that's the really cool part of that. Um, and and yeah, we're gonna let that kind of be the grounding base for today's episode. So I wanted to start maybe with something that has been coming up for me, which has been the recognition of things that used to trigger me, or feeling maybe misunderstood by someone, feeling like I'm not aligned, or feeling like I need to correct someone, and then actually having the ability to take a pause, take a deep breath, and then ask myself, is this really what you want to spend your energy on right now? And if the answer is no, then not doing it, and seeing what that feels like. Because sometimes I think, especially as you're stepping into your authentic self, you kind of hope that people get you right, right? Like, oh, well, you've misunderstood me for so long, or I didn't know who I was for so long. Now I want you to know who I really am, or what I really meant by that, or how I'm really feeling. And I think that that's beautiful. I do see that as a part of you reclaiming who you are and your authenticity and your power. But I'm finding myself in a season where I'm actually feeling like it's not as needed from me. It's almost like I've proven to my inner child that I got her back, that if need be, I will speak my mind and my truth, but that I actually don't need to spend time hoping that others understand me when they actually don't. Maybe they don't know how to, they won't ever. Or even just like dynamics, maybe these cycles of behavior of certain things that I notice in others that trigger me, and then recognizing I actually have power over that too. I actually don't have to be swept away by giving it so much energy within me and rethinking over and over what they said and how they said it. But why would they say that if I told them this, and how would come they. maybe it's a part of like there's so much going on already that I'm able to dismiss other things, no lo sé. But I wanted to share that to see if like maybe some of you guys resonated with that and found yourselves running up against that too, like deciding what's worth my energy, what's worth spending time on and thoughts on and emotions on, and what isn't. And I wonder if you've been surprised by anything that like a particular thing that you've been able to get through or past, that maybe in previous moments you used to kind of harp on or stay there. So no se les quería presentar esa pregunta. But maybe I'll start off, what it's like living an intuitive led life by mentioning what intuition maybe feels like, looks like, how I experience it, how I listen to it. And I share this in hopes that like these are little nuggets for some of you that maybe are trying to reconnect with your intuition or are doubting it también, because I think with intuition there's a lot of self-doubt, especially when you lived your whole life not listening to it. It's hard to discern, like, am I making this up? Is this real? Should I listen to this? And I think as more time has gone by, I no longer question, but I do remember at some point there was a time where I would question myself. Is this my intuition actually, or is it just me, or is it my thoughts, or is it my people pleasing? So for me, intuition is a language. It's a form of communication between ourselves, our body and ourselves, our souls and ourselves, that we're not always taught to know how to hear. Um, Personally, for me, my intuition speaks through, I would say, my body in the sense of like certain feelings within. And other times it comes through like kind of like a message, like a download of sorts. It's like a very distinct message, a yes, a no, a this or that. Um, and I think that for different people, it feels different ways. Some of you might feel your intuition in your stomach, in your lower abdomen area, kind of where the butterflies, if you feel your butterflies in your stomach, por ahí. Others feel it in their chest or their throat or their back. Um, it's almost like these signals that we get, that are telling us yes, no, excited, not excited. Um, and when I talk about intuition and when I work with people one on one, which by the way I do, someone asked me that the other day, like, do you like work with people? What do you do? And I was like, yeah, I have one-to-one intuitive sessions. It was actually Maria, the person that DM'd me, and she was like, and what are those? And I was like, ooh, I should talk about that on the podcast. But when I work with someone one to one, I include body wisdom as part of what we're doing. And um, I'll explain what intuitive sessions are maybe later on in the episode. But I wanted to talk about something that I always direct people to, which is learning what their full body yes is like within their body. And so that's one cool way to start learning how your body speaks to you, what that feels like. And so an exercise that I do with clients sometimes is I walk them through or I ask them to think about a scenario where they feel relaxed, where they feel at ease, where they feel happy and peaceful. And then I'll kind of play with then making them envision a situation that makes them uncomfortable, that triggers them. And for them to notice, maybe you're noticing right now as you're hearing what the difference is like in sensations in your body. It usually is different. So, like, maybe when I'm thinking of feeling relaxed, my chest feels open and warm and tingly and kind of like expanded. And then when I think about maybe my mother wound growing up, my stomach feels retracted. It shrinks up. It like, la panza como que empieza a doler. And so then that's how I know, oh, that's not a full body yes for me. The expansion is. So that's one of the ways where I identify intuition within myself, and then how I guide some people to notice and feel intuition within themselves. And I see that as actually something really important for first gens because a lot of us becoming these little adults, right? We've talked about that a lot in these podcast episodes. Many of the people I have had on became little adults. And when you do that, you learn to embody who you think you need to be, and you learn to shut down anything that doesn't align with that. So if little you was scared, but little adult you couldn't be because you were the older one in the home when you were scared, then you choose to shut down the scared part of you and display the brave part of you, the responsible part of you, the one that needs to know how to respond or how to act or what to do or what to say. And so over time, you learn to shut down that communication from your body, from your being, from your soul. Maybe your soul told you, I love to dance. I feel alive when I dance. But your reality told you, there's no time for dancing. You need to do your homework. You need to be helping. And so then you shut that part down, that authenticity, that intuition, that inner poder that I call, that it was speaking to you. And you let it know it actually there's no room for you here in my body, in my experience, in my reality. And so that's why I think intuition and reconnecting with that is so important for first gens, because we lose our GPS, we lose our brújula, as it's said in Spanish. Our brújula, I hope I'm saying it right, está descompuesta porque las descompuso nuestro upbringing, our experiences, our needs. And so then we disconnected from like who we really are, what we really want, what we really feel, and a reclamation of that, being able to tap back into that is super important, I feel, for first gens, for everyone, reconnecting with themselves, figuring out who they are in the world and how to exist within it, finding their place. I feel like it's really, really important. So hopefully my explanation of intuition allowed for you to maybe start tapping into some of those sensations within your body and start getting clues of how your body and your intuition actually does speak. And so I would say in my own life nowadays, I actually live very intuitive led, in the sense that I don't question what I feel anymore. And when I feel it, I find a way to honor it. So a silly, maybe very simple example, we'll start there because that's easier pues to digest. The other day I got out of work early. So as I was driving home, I look at a Goodwill. Instantly I feel a little pull towards that. Okay, I'm stopping there. No questions asked. And I, got off to the Goodwill, and it was actually such a good como experience for that day, for me, for what I was needing. It almost gave me the sensation of like when we're creative, where you unplug but you're in a zone. Así como que I was finding a lot of nice things, and I was just like in a good mood, and I felt relaxed and at peace. And I was like, wow, thank you, intuition. Maybe logically I would be like, oh, I can't wait to just get home and sit down and do XYZ, but instead I listened to that intuitive nudge and I went in that direction. Um, so that's a small, hopefully easy example of how it's like this kind of magnet. You get magnetized towards something, or you get a pull towards something, and then you kind of do it and you see what that outcome is. Um, Other instances that I have been following that maybe years ago, when I didn't know my intuition, when I didn't trust it enough, I would not have followed, is checking in on people when I keep thinking about them. So about a month ago, I think it was, or a few weeks ago, I kept thinking about this one friend of mine, and I just decided to send her a text. I hadn't talked to her maybe in a while, for sure, at least yeah, it had been a while. So I texted her and I was like, "Hey girl, like I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you, like and I just wanted to check in. I had the feeling like I needed to check in." And she was like, "Oh my god, thank you so much. I've been so stressed. I'm going to terminate someone tomorrow and that's been on my mind. Like I hate the idea of ending someone's employment." And if you guys don't know, I used to work in human resources. I actually still do. Now I'm back part time. I don't know if I've told you guys on the podcast, but bueno, I had 8+ years. That was my career. I studied human resources. Like that was what my degree was on. And so I was like, oh, like let me, I talked to her just through it or asked her some questions and just provided a little bit of validation, a little, I didn't change her life, but I was kind of like dropped in at the moment where maybe she needed me, someone with my background or that would understand at least because I've had to terminate people in my past. Um, and so in the past, like maybe you just think of someone, you're like, whatever. But I've started to learn to listen to that. Like, oh, I'm thinking of this person. Let me send them a message. Let me talk to them. Let me do blank. And typically that leads to something like I've been like, I've messaged certain people like, hey, my spidey senses are spidering. Like, what's up? I'm thinking of you. Are you okay? And it usually is with either like, oh my gosh, yes, this is happening, or like, oh no, which I don't like. That's not my intent, but like, oh no, nothing is happening, but I wonder what will be. And sometimes it does lead to like a few days later, like, I think you were ahead of schedule because guess what happened. Pero yeah, I would say like those are other ways in which I let my intuition lead and I allow myself to experience the results of that. But I think part of what it takes to be able to live that way is to have worked on the judgmental voice that lives in a lot of our heads. I think that being who I was in my upbringing, this hija madura, responsable, first gen, et cetera, parentified, all the things, eldest, um, there was a lot of lack of freedom in who I was. There was actually a lot of rules that I had made for myself or that others had put on me, conditioning. And intuition cuts through that, I feel, when you start to listen to your intuition. It doesn't abide by the laws or the regular, the kind of like the box that you've put yourself in. It asks you to step outside of that. And if you do it in a way where you're judging yourself the whole way through, where you don't love yourself, where you're not trusting of like, oh, no matter how it goes, I will be okay, then potentially you'll have a really hard time stepping into and listening to your intuition. But I definitely think like it took working on that self-judgment voice and trusting myself and trusting the universe to where I'm like, cool, I'm down for whatever this is going to lead me towards. Um, this other thing that I'm thinking about right now that happened, and this is more like the trust aspect, and feeling like you don't have to do everything. You are meant to trust también. Is that also around maybe a month or two ago, as part of work, we went on this lunch thing with a vendor, and the person that I met there, the vendor themselves, his mannerisms and way of speaking reminded me so much of a friend that I used to have. And I was like, this is so crazy that it's kind of like I'm meeting that person that I haven't seen in almost 2 years, almost 3 years. Wow. Through him, through this vendor. And so I remember just kind of sitting there at the lunch and being like, this is crazy. Like this person reminds me so much of them. But with that friendship, it kind of just fizzled out. And I felt like they were pulling away, like they weren't really like down to hang out. And so I decided not to insist and just kind of let it go. And tell me why. Only a week, almost, I don't know, whatever, only a few days ago, pues, I received a phone call from that person that that the vendor reminded me of. So mind you, it's been like 2 years since we've talked on the phone, 3 years since I've seen this person or more, almost, dang, I don't know, almost four maybe. No me acuerdo. Anyways, they call me and they're like, hey, sorry. I know it's been a while and I want to talk if you're down. And so we had like a really good reparative conversation. And I just see that as like, those things that people call like synchronicities or those esas cositas del universo, because when I saw this friend of mine, well, when I saw the vendor that reminded me of my friend, I remember thinking like, is this a sign for me to reach out? Is it someone that I'm supposed to repair things with? Am I the one that has to take the lead on this? But why am I always the one that has to take the lead on it? And I don't want to do that, and like going back and forth in my head and debating and all the things, and really feeling like, you know what? I don't feel like I am responsible for what happened in that friendship. And I feel like I no tengo ganas como de to beg or to kind of convince. And so I remember actually thinking, I'm going to send love their way. This is more like the magical. I mean, I think intuition is magic, it's really beautiful and cool. So, yeah, this is more of the maybe things that a veces me da un poquito de pena to share. I'm not sure why, because this is who I am, but maybe for some people it might sound weird. But we're going to talk about alchemy actually in a second. But I've been working on that, like kind of what I started with this episode with, like have you observed moments in which maybe you would metabolize or process or alchemize it into anger, into triggers, and then can you switch it and turn it into something different? So if you're going to process it, can you process it and the output be something different? So for this scenario, maybe my typical output was confusion, being upset, frustrated, grieving. But this time when I thought of that person, of that friendship, prior to the reparative conversation, I remember I just thought about them and I was like, you know what? I send love your way. Like wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I'm going to, the output of my thoughts and seeing you in a vendor are going to be me like wishing you the best. And you can interpret it however you'd like. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, it's because I did that he called. But I feel like it's a way, all of that combined, it was one, honoring what I was feeling, but also two, kind of like encouraging myself to change, to flip the script, to change it. And then three, I think because I had done that and because I had held that space for myself, right? Because clearly that person wasn't available the last couple of years to hold it for me. I held that space for myself. I processed it for myself. I felt my feelings. I let my things kind of metabolize. And so when he reached out by that time, I was in such a different head and heart space. And I think that's so cool. I don't know. I just think like it all added up, it all kind of like combined, created this experience to be able to then have a productive conversation as opposed to like, no, pues es que like you did this to me and we and da, and we were able to instead be like, this is my piece, that's your piece, and like talk through that and speak through that. And that was really, really cool. So I also credit that to intuition and like the intuitive nudge to know maybe like, ooh, let's alchemize it into something different and like let's hold space for it. Let's not ignore it. It clearly continues to pop up in my head. But also like let's honor and trust that we did right by that person, that now it's their turn to do right by us. So a lot of cool things, like honoring your own feelings, your own space, your own emotions around it. Also not overextending just because someone else can't meet you halfway. But then when and if they do, like having the space to do that because you've already held it for yourself. So that was another kind of cool experience of that. And I think like in the sense of let's say como work and purpose, I just actually completed my 90th, my 3 month or 90-day introductory period at my part-time HR job. And in reflecting around that, it's been really interesting and cool. I mean, it's obviously been a transitional phase to hold both. So for a long time, I rejected going back into HR. I was like, no, I found my space. I found my place. It's first gen healing. It's intuitive prima things. Like, and it does, like that's what gives me the most life, like being able to connect with amazing people, being able to have conversations that I feel like are insightful and that matter, not only on the podcast but in my one-to-ones in the community I've built online. It's just like all amazing, right? But I still haven't found a way to create that consistent income. And so I was rejecting having a part time job. I was rejecting going back into human resources because I felt like there wouldn't be a way in which I could do that and not burn out or not feel like I used to feel. But let me tell you guys something. Since then, or around the time where I was like, okay, I'm going to start looking, I promise you, I begged the universe, God, universe, whatever what, or what I believe in, ancestors. I was like, please, like, let me find a space and a place where it does not feel like it used to, where I can hold both. Porque one of the things that I told someone when I was feeling very conflicted and very sad that I had to maybe go back into the world in this way, I was like, I just feel like my soul is going to die again. And I just feel like me voy a apagar otra vez. And yo no me quiero apagar, I have found myself and purpose and all of this stuff. And I don't want to not have the energy to keep that part of me alive. And I'm so thankful because I ended up finding a place that accommodated my part-timeness, where I didn't have a long commute, where I could put the experience that I already had to use without needing to acquire any like new skills or knowledge, where I felt and feel appreciated, and where I still feel enough energy to now hold this space, continue the podcast, continue my sessions, and potentially, intuition, universe, these things. Yeah, they do dabble into spirituality, and so yeah, I think like for me, I spiritually felt like this opportunity came in like magic because I had looked at job postings for so many weeks and I didn't feel like applying for any. So I was kind of like comiendo caca, feeling like like the pressure of creating income and generating more income, but then at the same time not feeling inclined to like take a step in that direction. And thankfully, I got referred to this position by an amiga of mine. And so I got to skip the application process. I got to skip needing to fake that I was really ambitious about HR and I was ready to come back. Like, I was able to be real and say, you know what? Like, life changed me. My sister's cancer journey changed me. I don't feel like working in HR full time, but I do feel like being a part of this world in some way. And I do also have my business. So, kind of leading with integrity, authenticity, taking up space, and being honest. And yes, being fearful that maybe that would cause me not to get the job, but feeling like it's the only way I want to move forward. And even just showing up for myself in that way allowed for me to, I think it took away some of that feeling that I was dreading. It was like, oh, it goes away when I take up space in my way. It goes away when I show up for me. It goes away when I show up as me, something that maybe I didn't know how to do in my previous HR roles. And that energy, that force behind our work, like that first gen work ethic and trying to prove ourselves and try to get others to validate that we're worthy, since that didn't exist within me anymore, since that need had been filled in other ways, it actually changed how I experience work, because I'm not going in there with an empty cup hoping that it gets filled. I'm going in there with a full cup, down for the droplets or driblets that I get. And to my surprise, I don't get that. I do get that like appreciation and good feeling in that job. But definitely, like, that was just kind of another instance of being intuitive and like being led by intuition, feeling that opportunity come through, feeling the yes right away, feeling like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. And I want to share with you guys that as my 90 days were approaching, my manager actually shared with me that, she's like, I had been praying for someone like you. I had been praying for help in this and this aspect. And, you really align with what I was looking for. And I remember when she said that, I got the chills, like my whole body got the chills because I had been praying for that también. And so how cool is it that we got to kind of answer that call? And I'll share with you guys this too. Ooh, so much. Mucho está saliendo. Because I have my 90-day, like, that came up. Part of the discussion was compensation. So definitely in that area, although like thankfully I'm making income enough to pay bills, I do need it to be more sustainable than that. And in the past, I never negotiated a pay rate. I actually preferred maybe just leaving and finding a different job than having the super uncomfortable conversation around compensation, and so what was really cool about this conversation is that knowing that I was going to have it, it was like a download that came through and said, like, this was already divine. Like, you have nothing to worry about, Like, this was already divinely led to you. So don't feel like she clearly heard and answered the call. You clearly heard and answered the call. Like, don't be afraid of what the outcome of this conversation is going to be. And kind of grounding into that was so helpful. Because even though I did get really nervous still, even though I'm in HR and I have my voice and I am me, quien sabe qué, as soon as the conversation was starting, I kind of blacked out a little bit from the nerves and stuff. Pero I got to hear her out. And then I also had the opportunity to fully share everything that was on my mind in a way that did not feel like I was shrinking myself in any way or like I was intimidated or scared. It was very grounded in the sense of like, here are my needs. This is the place that it's coming from. This is a XYZ, and I got to express it that way. And I truly feel that the energetics behind how you speak and how you feel are felt by the other person. I think that's something that always confused me, and I like maybe for many years I didn't understand what the heck do people mean by energetics of stuff. But the more that I work one to one with people, the more that I work with energy, the more that I work within myself, I I'm understanding it. And so because I was able to ground into that knowing and feel secure of no matter what the outcome is, because the outcome could have been like, I don't think you deserve that. I don't think I can meet you there. I don't think, like, why would you expect that? I don't know, lo que sea, no? Um, because I wasn't fearing the outcome, I think I was able to get through what I needed to say with the energetics of coming from a confidence place, of knowing my worth. And I think that was well received, I didn't get an automatic yes, but I also understood where she's coming from, my boss. And so it felt so, so good, you guys. It felt so different than in the past. I know I'm turning into a different Priscilla in the way that I speak and how I stand up for myself and how I communicate. And I can attribute all of that to listening to my intuition. And this conversation, like, maybe is the way I was able to speak in this, maybe it was a result of, let's say, my one-to-ones or the community I hosted that would make me nervous, but I would still show up for, or going live when I would get super nervous, but she'll still showed up for. It's like all the little breadcrumbs that sometimes when you're in the midst of them, you feel like this isn't the thing that I want, though. I'm not where I want to be. Why am I having to experience this if it's not that? But if you don't find a way out of it, maybe you can at least find relief in knowing this is leading me to the next thing, which will lead me to the next thing, which will lead me to the next thing. And then eventually I will get to the thing that I want, you know? Um, and I think that I'm seeing that. I'm definitely know that I am being transformed into someone that I wasn't when I thought I was ready for what I wanted, if that makes sense. Like, 3 years ago when I started this, I think I thought I was ready. Like, yes, I'm ready for my podcast to blow up and for me to help all these people, and I'm gonna have groups. Yo, Priscilla from 3-4 years ago could not have handled any of that. Let me tell you, Priscilita. Let me tell you, mujer, que you hosted a community eventually, yes. And you did it. You did it for a year, yes, but it was not that easy. It took a lot of inner work. Or, yes, you hosted certain community events and you are capable of them, but it took a lot of inner work, feeling like you deserved it, feeling like you could do it, feeling like, all of the things. So just know, you guys, and try to, reframe what you're experiencing. Like, how is this turning me into a person that I want to be, into the person that I want to be? How is this actually helping me? It feels like it's holding me back. It feels like it's hurting me. But what am I actually learning from this? Even in repeated cycles, because what I feel has been the experience for me of like stepping into my purpose, I kind of call it like a boomerang, where like I get inspired, me aviento. I'm like, yes, I go for it. And then algo pasa and then it brings me back. And I'm like, oh my God, no. Who am I? Who do I think I am? What am I doing? Et cetera, et cetera. And then otra vez I get inspired and it's like this boomerang effect. But in the boomerang, in the repeated action, in the repeated cycles, I know I've been building strength within me. I know I've been building resilience. I know I've been like meeting people along the way and getting and gaining different pieces of the puzzle. And that is helping me become who I need to be and then be able to match up with my vision. And so I find that super amazing and super cool to be able to recognize that and now come from a place of being more grounded in that. Because when you're in a place of como scarcity and it's like, I have to, I have to, I have to, I have to, no se siente bien. It actually really doesn't feel good. And I would much rather achieve my goals and my vision in this sense, grounded in who I am and what I bring to the table after many falls, then, feeling maybe having had gotten it all in the beginning and then being terrified of failing and then having a much deeper fall, a much less grounded, less resourced, less wise version of me fall. It could have been, horrible. So I'm finding a lot of gratitude in the path that intuition has led me down. Although, don't get me wrong, there have been a lot of moments where I do feel the frustration of like, oh, like, but I thought once I stepped into my purpose, like everything was going to align and I would be taken care of financially and all these things. But when I take a step back and recognize all that I do have and all that I have received, it really is a lot. And I'm really thankful that I get to see it that way, and I guess I encourage you to see it that way for yourself too. And maybe we'll do it in a different episode, but even like the lack of money, the lack of income, it does teach you things. Not that we want to stay there, but it like asks me, at least for me, I'm recognizing, okay, what does money do for me? It's asking me to step into a version of me that I have feared, like a very powerful, grounded, confident version of me. Like it almost feels like when you step into that is when it all is all going to flow in. But I have faced a lot of hurdles along the way. I have felt like imposter syndrome and like scared and all the things. And as I'm talking and I'm feeling inspired again and like kind of, in the seat of this is what I know I'm here to do. And I'm here to hopefully share enough that will help others do the same or be who they are, a step further into their journey. I constantly am thinking right now también of people that maybe are experiencing the fear that goes beyond what we're talking about. So I don't know if you probably didn't make it to this part of the episode, or maybe you did, and I hope that what I've shared with you helps you in your journey too, with everything that is happening here in this country, against our communities, in the world. I hope that some of what I've said today resonates in some way or another. And, a lot of us who are still kind of popping back up and getting back up and hearing the call, I don't think it comes from a place of not having experienced difficulties. It's in fact, despite them, we've worked through it. And so I hope that you find your new guiding light. Maybe, yes, you're being forced to reroute, but I hope that you find your next destination, or that at least you find enough within you to regroup, to energize yourself back up and like a boomerang get back up, you know. Someone on TikTok posted un video, this mujer that I follow, we're this mutual, she posted something and I told her like, you can drown, mujer, but I need you to, you know, we need you to get back as soon as you can and keep swimming, you know. And she's like, you're so right, we need to keep going. And it's like, yeah, we're those of us that can, those of us that have the privilege to do so, those of us that maybe are feeling the pain and all of that feel a lot, and so we process it all. um May we also find a way to show up for our people, show up in whatever way we're being called to, because we're going to need each other. We need representation of people who care. We need representation of people with integrity, you know. We need to see that along the way, because right now who's being highlighted is people that don't care, or that don't have the empathy, that don't have the depth, that are money hungry, that are power hungry. And I think it's important for us to remember not all of us are like that. And some of us, I mean, myself, I feel like I was willing to let go of whatever version of success I had found to take a step back and find myself and then live in integrity. And that hasn't always been easy. In fact, I don't know, I think I've mentioned it here. I am in a lot of debt, you know, but I am also, maybe it's like physical 3D debt, but spiritually, I know I already won, you know? We already won. We're good people. We care about others. We not, as first gens and as healing first gens, we don't only care about ourselves, we care about our family stories. We are trying to understand. We're trying to break those cycles. Like, y'all, somos amazing. Son amazing ustedes. Don't ever forget that. Yes, the circumstances are caquita right now, you know, but at the end of the day, if you believe in spiritually or soulfully or ancestrally, you are doing an amazing job. You really truly are. You're not stepping on others. If you're working towards living in integrity, congratulations. You are amazing. And you are one of the people that we need to see in this world, that need to use your voice, that we need you to be okay, to keep going. Those of you that are starting to be leaders, or that already are leaders in your communities, in your work, in your families, don't forget about filling your cup. Don't forget about recognizing your worth. Don't forget about who you are becoming and how special that is. And thank you. Thank you for staying in integrity. Thank you for being beautiful, for not letting these moments turn you into someone that you're not. Thank you for coming back to yourself. Okay? And thank you for owning who you are. And maybe some days it's not going to feel safe to do so. We forgive you. But on the days that you can, on the days that you can come back to your roots, to who you are, to how you show up, how to your culture, to like owning that part of you. Thank you for those moments, because they're needed. I feel they're needed. I was just telling the beautiful human that I interviewed this morning, I felt myself like disappearing in the corporate world. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize. I was doing the team lunches and the team whatevers, and I was like, yo no quepo aquí. I'm not this. I'm not this. And I felt like I was like, in the name of professionalism, letting go of me, you know, and believing that if I was, let's say, too sentimental or too loud or happy or giggly or ditzy or lo que sea, como goofy, then that wasn't the right version of professionalism. And I'm so thankful and grateful for myself to show myself like, actually, there's a different version of that. You get to own what version you are. And I have, you know, now I show up into my HR job as me. I don't change that. And in fact, I can see how like my boss that maybe has never left that world almost continues to think that that's how it has to be, that the only version of professionalism is XYZ. And it's so cool because I get to be like, actually, like, I've showed up in the world professionally, but as me. And I am willing to bet that there's other people looking for that too, you know? And I think it's going to be important for us to have that discernment and that intention of like, how can we support those that are living in integrity, that are living by what they say they are, who they say they are, what they say they believe in? Like, how can we uplift those voices and including ourselves so that we create a world that works better, that feels better? Um, and so that we become the louder voice as opposed to what's currently taking up the most space and energy and attention and all of that, you know? Whew, that was a lot. I don't want to end today's episode without mentioning that I do offer sessions. I do offer intuitive sessions, and then I do have my mentorship open. So it's like 3-month mentorship with me. And the intention of any of the services that I have is to help you navigate whether it be connecting with your intuition, self discovery, and authenticity, navigating an identity shift, or birthing a soul led vision. Those are kind of the options I have on there in like, what can I support you with? But my intention is to help you with those things. And I do that through intuitive sessions. And what those are is essentially letting my intuition be a part of the conversation. So if you come to me and you say, you know what, I'm feeling stuck here, I want to get there. Okay, cool. I will hear you, right? Like hear what you're saying, but I also tend to feel like, what does that feel like in your body? And also ask intuitive led questions. Like maybe you're thinking this is related strictly to work, but maybe I have an intuitive nudge that actually this has to do with the dynamic you had with your brother growing up, you know, or actually it's something within you that you're disconnected from yourself in some way. And if that connection doesn't happen, you won't be able to take that step, you know. But I will say every single session is unique. What comes up for people is unique. You know, it really depends on you. And that's the cool thing about intuition, is that it's like, it's not like a book, you know, that I read and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is the knowledge, let me apply it, copy paste to everyone. No, it's like, how maybe you want to be more authentic. Okay, what does authenticity mean to you? What are examples that you've seen in the world? How does authenticity feel in your body? How were you made to feel when you were authentic and maybe it wasn't well received? How do we work through that, you know? And with someone else, it could be about confidence, or someone else, it could be about like, I really want to serve. I really want to show up for others. Okay, what's keeping you from that, you know? And so if you're interested in any of those things, you can go to the description in the episode. I'll have my link tree there and you can sign up or schedule either a one-to-one intuitive session, like just the one-off call, or you can have like an introductory meeting with me where we talk. That one's complimentary, no te cuesta nada. You let me know where you're at, what you're looking to work through, and then we can see if we're a good fit for mentorship, which I'm excited to bring on a few people to do that with. So other than that, I'm going to end off by asking you guys what you guys thought of the last episode, the episode with Jose, where he got to share his story with us. We are doing a part 2 that is coming out next, I believe. Yeah, next week. But Jose was such a light. It was such a pleasure to have him on the episode. I mentioned también that I had never had like a guest from an agency, so that was new for me. But it was such an aligned partnership and collaboration. So I'm so glad I got to have him on, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And you took something from his episode. And I would love to ask you, what question would you have asked Jose if you had him in front of you? Let us know in the comments. On Spotify you can comment, on YouTube you can comment, on Apple Podcasts I'm not sure that you can, but feel free to DM your question or just let me know. But yeah, what question would you have asked Jose? What would you have wanted to know from him? Let me know and I can pass on the question. But other than that, I hope you got to see a glimpse into what an intuitive led life looks like. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that. But I hope wherever you find yourself in life, in your journey, that you are doing okay, that you're taking care of yourself, that you're finding ways to energize and fill your own cup, okay? Cuídense mucho, quiéranse mucho, and I will talk to you, or you'll see me in the next episode.